Welcome, everybody. It's time for another episode of OC Spotlight. The one show, the only show that shows you some of the most amazing technologies and amazing people doing incredible things right here in Orange County. And today with us, we have, well, we've got quite a story to tell. To start with the story, we have Howard Leonhardt, the executive chairman of StimCore, StimCore being an early stage medical device company here. And I'm going to let Howard come on and explain it to us a little better. Welcome, Howard.
Thank you, Paul. What a great pleasure to be here.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you coming into our studio today here at the University of California, Irvine's Beal Applied Innovation Center, because you've got an applied innovation, if ever I've heard one here. Tell me about StimCore and this early stage medical device company.
StimCore, based right here in Irvine and working here in UCI Cove Applied Innovation Center and also University Lab Partners, where we have an R&D lab, is focused on the convergence of devices, bioelectrics, biologics, ozone, and light therapies for treating sleep breathing disorders. So we take devices and integrate them with light and bioelectrics, and these bioelectrics control protein expressions that, in short, at the end of the procedures, you are able to breathe better. At least that's what we're striving to do.
Well, that's quite an ambitious goal. And to help us explain a little bit further in the overall problems and conditions that you're trying to deal with, we have with us the Chief Medical Officer for StimCore, Dr. Les Miller. Welcome, sir.
Hello, Paul. Thank you for having me.
I know that you are well known as a heart specialist. You actually deal with, as I understand, heart failure. How does this whole world of sleep-related breathing disorders, did I get that correct? Is that the overall area that we're dealing in? Sleep-related breathing disorders. How in the world does that tie in with a heart?
Well, first of all, I think people need to understand that this is really a quite huge health problem. Estimates are as many as 20% of the U.S. population have some form of sleep disordered breathing, and the impact can be really quite profound. Most people would separate this into two broad categories of the obstructive form, which I think we're gaining a lot more ability to diagnose and understand, and the central form that is more typical of the apneic form of this. But in the obstructive form, there is a collapse of the airway that really reduces oxygen in the blood, and that has adverse consequences, both cardiovascular, neurologic, and other endpoints, including awakening, feeling fatigued, tired, difficulty concentrating, headaches, a number of really significant symptoms that people pass off to other problems. The obstructive form probably comes to people's attention because of the snoring that is fairly typical of that form. Again, it's an obstructive form, and yet the people with sleep disorder breathing are more characterized by apneic, where they actually have pauses of up to 10 seconds before they recycle and start breathing again.
And let me just interrupt you for a second. So you're saying apneic. That really has to do with you stop breathing.
Yes.
And you stop breathing. Why? Because your airways are obstructed?
No, there are two different things. The apneic period is more typical of the central problem that is characterized by this period of stopping breathing, which is not very typical of the obstructive form of sleep disorder breathing. So that's somewhat how we kind of branch those two types of sleep disorder breathing.
And this isn't just a minor problem. I'm of the age. I'm a man of a certain age here. I'm in my mid-60s. I myself admit that I don't know if I have obstructive sleep apnea, but I certainly got something that makes me snore pretty loud at night. And from everything I've tried to research, it has to do with what? As your body ages, everything gets flabby. It gets loose. And as it starts getting loose, as I breathe, it starts vibrating, or I'm gasping or choking or whatever here, right? My airway is somehow obstructed from the back of my throat. Is that an overstatement here?
Well, that's pretty correct. It can be all up and down the upper airway and palate and tongue, and a variety of anatomical structures can really be involved in the obstructive form of this problem. And again, it relates to snoring, but the airway actually collapses to a large degree, and that's what really leads to this low oxygen tension and the problems. But some of the sobering statistics is that it has such an effect on mentation on the day during the day, is that 15 times more likely to have a traffic accident, 6 times more likely to die of it.
What?
That's what this poor sleep leads to, that difficulty in concentrating, and really has some profound side effects.
To
The
say,
most
say
Go
nothing
ahead.
about the divorce rate in America. I find myself sleeping more and more alone simply because nobody can put up with my snoring here. And I, like so many men, does this affect men more than it does women, or is it equal?
It does affect more men than women, sometimes estimated at about 15% of American men, while about 15% of American women. The risk factors are age, obesity, and use of alcohol, but use of sedatives. But obesity is probably the cardinal one that we see and we recognize early. We used to think in the sleep apneic period that it was always these somewhat morbidly obese people who had difficulty moving their diaphragms when they were asleep at night. But we now see it in thin, aesthetic people. So the central form does not have a specific body habitus, nor does the obstructive form. The side effects I see as a cardiologist are really quite profound. Estimates of 40% of the 8 million people with heart failure have some form of sleep disorder breathing.
Oh, my
particularly.
goodness. Now, I
And
never associate the two. I would think sleep is just a minor inconvenience. It makes people mad. It maybe leads to divorce or sleeping alone. And it makes one rather sleepy and more susceptible, as you said. I hadn't thought about that, car accidents and other sorts of things. But my heart's affected by this?
yeah, it can have a lot of manifestations in terms of this low oxygen can really cause adverse effects in metabolism and stress in the heart, and it can be a contributor to worsening heart failure. It has a really profound causal relationship with one of the most common problems in cardiology today is atrial fibrillation, a very
Yeah.
common arrhythmia that's triggered when the heart continues to sustain these periods of low oxygen and can prompt that particular arrhythmia. A very high percentage of people with hypertension have a form of sleep apnea, and conversely, 40% of the people with sleep apnea have hypertension. It has a really significant fourfold increase of risk of stroke in people who
Oh,
have
my
sleep
goodness.
apnea.
You're hitting all the hot buttons for men of a certain age here.
No, it really is common, and I think that one of the things I would leave you with is that 80% of people are probably undiagnosed. And imagine if you don't have a partner, you probably have no idea that that's why you're tired and these symptoms persist. So we really need to increase our sensitivity to asking patients about these kinds of symptoms in a variety of circumstances.
Well, I've done some research on this my own because, yes, it is a problem in my life, and I know it is, and I don't know how to solve it. I've gone and talked to my primary care physician, and he does what? He shrinks. He says, take a sleeping pill, or try getting a different pillow, or that's just the way it is because you're getting old and your passageways, your muscles are loosening, your skin is loosening. Maybe you got some inflammation here. Take something, get rid of your nasal congestion. I have to have a deviated septum too that makes it hard for me to breathe through my nose. So all of these things, he just kind of shrugs and says, what do you expect? You're 65.
And I think that is not an uncommon approach to this, that it is something that you say this is just an age-related problem, but I think that we're much more able to diagnose this condition in the obstructive form in particular. And now with these portable diagnostics to pick up people that are having these periods of stop breathing or apnea at night and really begin to sort out. I think Howard will be able to talk a lot more about both diagnostic and our new therapeutics.
Well, before we get into the breakthrough that you guys have come with, let's talk about the lack of alternatives for people like me up to this point in time. It's either I'm undiagnosed and I don't even know what the cause is. I just know I snore and everybody hates it. So go snore, go sleep on the couch. Or it becomes more serious and I'm actually, as you say, stopping breathing. Is that where these, what do they call them? CPAP machines, these where you take something and it forces air into your lungs to kind of keep your breathing. Is that what that is?
Well, it's much more typical for the central apneic where you really prove people stop. The CPAP is continuous positive airway pressure where we're literally forcing the air in so you don't have these periods where the oxygen saturation falls. The problem is you're kind of linked to that indefinitely. If you travel, you need to bring your machine with you. And
Yeah.
there's a risk of fungal infection.
I was going to say these things aren't easy to clean and take care of and use and all this stuff. Yeah.
They get tied up. We've made a lot of progress. They used to be just the therapy was worse than the disease in terms of the noise of the machines and so forth. So it's better, but it really isn't a curative. It's a way to deal with it better than other ways. But I think that the new technology that Howard will talk about helps the obstructive population significantly. And I think we're unraveling how many of these people with snoring really have a reversible form and treatable form that can really reverse this condition and make a significant difference in people's lives.
All right. Well, you keep queuing them up. Let's bring Howard back in because I want to hear, other than being hooked to a machine for the rest of my life, how can I, and that doesn't fix anything. That just helps me deal with it. That doesn't affect the underlying inflammation, flabbiness, whatever you want to call it, all this stuff that's happening as my body is getting looser and this stuff is closing off my airways or vibrating and making noises. All this, it sounds silly even to talk about. I'm embarrassed to even talk about it. Is there a cure for it? Is there a way to reverse it for anybody?
Well, it's a strong word to say cure in the medical industry,
Right.
but
I'm
I
looking
can
for
say,
answers.
before I talk about the details of the StimCore technology platform, I'd like to mention that when I first got involved with this project, I met Dr. Blair Bittner, our Chief Scientific Officer, and she operates a breathing disorder treatment clinic here in Irvine, California, just a few minutes from where we're sitting. And before I agreed to license our patents and to become involved, I spoke to some of the patients that she treats at that clinic, and they told me that they snored for their entire adult life and they never had good night's sleep. They always felt tired. And after going through her treatment regime that includes the StimCore technology platform, they have never felt better in their life. And they stopped snoring and their relationship with their spouse is better. But more important perhaps, or equally important I should say, is that they've never felt better. They're dreaming for the first time. Wow. And they're waking up for the first time in their life feeling well rested. So that's the foundation of what we're doing here, and then it ties into what everything Dr. Miller said.
And this comes out of her work because she has one of these. I guess are there a lot of them? She said there aren't many. I talked to her briefly before this. She said there's I think like 7,500 of these sleep doctors or sleep clinics nationwide. That doesn't sound like a lot for a nation of 350 million people here. So is this a? I'll start with Howard. Maybe the doctor can answer too. Is this a little known field, a little studied field? Are there more people getting into it? Is this just something we sort of ignored and lived with and now we're starting to address more seriously? We'll start with Howard here.
It's exactly that. It's perhaps a hidden problem that most doctors haven't made the connection with hypertension or AFib or excessive fatigue with sleep breathing disorders, and now it's understood that there is a direct connection. So that means treating it would be important, and there are a lack of centers and a lack of technology available, and our goal is to change that.
And I think the other doctor you're referring to, Dr. Blair, has used what I've read about too, this very expensive laser technology where you somehow use lasers to go in and what do you do? I guess you shrink or you tighten or something, the loose skin at the back of your neck or your tongue or other sorts of things. But again, that's an extremely expensive piece of equipment. Somebody's going to pay for all that. That's not something most people have access to. I want to go back to the doctor for 1 second. You've been through medical school, obviously. You're a well thought of, well-known, renowned expert in heart failure. Did you fail to miss that class in med school, or did they fail to give you one? Did they talk about sleep a lot when you were in med school?
It goes back to the original point. We thought that it was kind of what we call a phenotype, that it was a morbidly obese person, and that's the only people we suspected this. But as the data has come forward, as it's now a central part of my initial evaluation, and we ask a lot about snoring as kind of the screening question, and then talk to the patient's partner as, do you hear them stop breathing periodically? And
or gagging or other choking or other sorts of noises people say I make sometimes, yeah.
he snores and that's the way they leave it. But we know it has a lot of morbidity associated. So we do a lot of screening now, really getting attuned to how prevalent this is.
So let's go back to Howard to answer the key question. Maybe I'm being too overly ambitious. You are an early stage medical device company. This is still early in all the research you're doing, but what is it that you're attempting to do? These are actual devices that somehow you go to your ordinary physician or dentist or something and they'll fit you with this thing. It looks like a horseshoe or something and it goes into your mouth. Tell me more about these couple devices that you guys are experimenting with here.
Well, StimCore is the technology and innovation engine of products for treating sleep breathing disorders. And these products are designed to feed in to a franchise program that Dr. Blair Bittner and our team has developed, which we call BreatheStem. So our intention is that once you go through Dr. Bittner's training and certification program, we'll be able to certify a center to be a BreatheStem franchise, and they'll be able to put up a sign outside of their dentistry office or their general practitioner office, and people will know when they see that sign that this center has been certified and trained in the BreatheStem techniques, which is really Dr. Bittner's techniques. And these techniques include a convergence of using devices, bioelectric stimulation for controlled protein expressions, which is the IP that I brought
That's
to
a
the
mouthful right there. I have no, what does that mean? Somehow you're using these, it's an actual device that you, there's one for your face, there's one for your nose, there's one for your mouth, and you insert, and they come in different sizes, so you sort of get fitted for it. And then this is something the patient takes home. It's a prescription thing. They got to go to a doctor to get it, but then they're taught how to use this thing, and it shrinks and it tightens it. It somehow helps alleviate this condition. It doesn't just mask it like a CPAP does. It actually somehow corrects it or helps it.
Well, what you're describing is maybe a part of the issue, is that there is not one magical device that can solve all these problems.
Yeah.
So maybe it's appropriate to explain how the BreatheStem system works.
Okay.
The BreatheStem system works by the patient comes in and has a customized scan that is a very special piece of equipment that Dr. Bittner has sourced, and she has worked with the manufacturers to develop a software algorithm program that puts on a screen what is interfering with your breathing. And when you're under the scan, she'll ask you to bend back like you're sleeping, look forward, look left, look right. And
so we're not guessing. They can actually analyze you and figure out what is causing this problem. Where's the obstruction? Where's
Exactly.
the loose skin? Where's the problem here?
And then the treatment is customized based on that information. So for some people, it's going to be primarily a sinus inflammation problem. For other people, it's going to be that their tongue is too large. For other people, it's going to be that the tissues in their palate are too loose and interfering.
Well, I'm in radio. I can think I got all of those. I got an obstructed nose. I certainly got a big tongue and a big mouth, and I probably keep it open too often here. So I'm laughing, but I'll tell you what, it's not a laughable condition if you have any of these things. Just about everybody I know does.
And some people, it's going to require reshaping the inner shape of their mouth, arch expansion or airway expansion.
Or the something at the back of your throat, the skin's loose, and that's
where some of those devices that you maybe inferred to come in.
Right.
And what Dr. Bittner does, which the BreatheStem certified centers will do after they finish her training program and they continue to have support. These centers, when they run into a difficult case, they'll contact the headquarters and get a board of advisors that will look at the scans and will say, this is what we recommend for this patient.
There you go.
And the treatments are a convergence of a number of technologies. So it's not only bioelectric stimulation that controls protein expression, which is what.
And what's that? I'm trying to understand what that means. Bioelectric. So somehow this is like a battery or something, and it's sending some sort of electrical stimulation to what? Tighten things or shrink things?
Exactly. So we have signals that release troponelastin, which increase elasticity of tissues. We have signals that release follistatin and klotho, which are known to rebuild flappy muscle to be tight muscle. We have technology that releases bone morphogenic protein number 9 and bone morphogenic protein number 2 and OPG, which that serves to stabilize bone. So, for instance, if we use one of those devices that expand your airways and open up the arch and allow you to breathe better, a big problem is that the old technologies will have a relapse, that it might expand it and
For a
everything's
little
okay.
while, and it goes right back.
It
Sure.
goes right back.
Sure.
So what we're doing
You
is
would
we've
think, yeah.
developed a technology that basically stabilizes and freezes the new position where you breathe better, so it doesn't relapse back. So people who have attempted this in the past, it's been a big disappointment that people use those devices that are available from a few different providers right now. And after they finish the 12 weeks of treatment, they're all happy because they're breathing better.
Right.
But then unfortunately it relapses and they go back to bad breathing and snoring again.
And maybe this is a horrible analogy, but to me it sort of strikes me like Botox. You can go get rid of the wrinkles for a little while, but pretty soon the wrinkles just come back, and you got to keep getting another treatment, another treatment, another treatment. And what you're talking about is actually not just treating it, but maybe freezing it, fixing it, finding a way to reduce the whatever it is, inflammation, flappy skin, muscles, you rattled off a half a dozen things that can go wrong to make you snore. I'm going to come back to the doctor here. All right, so this sounds pretty high tech to me. How did you guys get involved? Why did you get involved? Why do we have even a cardiologist, somebody that deals with the heart, dealing with sleep-related devices and techniques? Why would you come into this?
Well, I'm more on the side of sleep apnea, which is where the cardiovascular consequences.
The severe stuff, yeah, right.
So as opposed to the obstructive form that Howard's really talking about, that we can diagnose with these scans and intervene upon. The other form with the apneic form really is a very different kind of approach, and you have to separate them out because they both could start with snoring.
Wow. Howard, I know you've been in medical devices for years. I looked at you, and I've met before. You've been on one of our shows before, and I know you started off. What'd you do with heart? Didn't you do something that had to do with heart valves or heart?
Well, all of us in this interview circle are getting up there in age.
You've been down this path before with other devices. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at here.
That's true. And I met Les when he was chairman of cardiovascular medicine at the University of Minnesota. I grew up in Minnesota, and Minnesota is one of the leading centers in the world for
Really?
cardiovascular research.
I had no idea.
And
I too was born in Minnesota, so we all have a common connection here. Go ahead.
We both of us had a shared belief in using regenerative medicine techniques to try to treat heart failure. And
Because normally the heart doesn't regenerate, right? That's the
That's
general idea is you got damage, it ain't coming back.
That is true. And kind of make a long story really short is we began working on that in the 1990s and ended up taking a technology using muscle-derived stem cells to regenerate damaged heart muscle through pilot phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 clinical studies. We took that company public in 2008. And at that time, all of us in the research and development area, we were trying to find ways to improve upon those results. Those studies, we just injected muscle stem cells one time in the damaged heart and then hoped for a miraculous turnaround of the heart failure, which we actually did get pretty good results.
Right.
But along the way, we learned that bioelectrics, biologics could improve upon those results. And in 2009 or 2008, I moved out to California, and we set up an innovation accelerator. And the idea was we had already spent 15 years and over $140 million learning how to regenerate damaged hearts.
Right.
And perhaps some of what we learned would be applicable to other organs. And we set up this innovation accelerator because we had bioelectric stimulation technologies for homing stem cells. So if we stimulate your knee, your stem cells go to your knee. If we stimulate your teeth, the stem cells from your own body
Really?
migrate.
You can create a homing signal for these stem cells
Yes.
and direct them where you wanted to go. So all of this, and then you discovered what the research Dr. Blair is doing here locally, and you said, hey, this kind of fits what we're trying to do and what we have done successfully before. All right. Well, it's still a little mind-boggling to me. I got to tell you, it's a big problem that we have, I think, ignored for far too long and accepted as simply one of the facts of getting older, particularly for me and men of a certain age. I want to thank you guys for coming on and tackling this. Where are you at in the process right now here? We'll go back to Howard here. Is this early stage? What does that mean? Are you still conducting the research? Are you still raising the funds? Are you still going through clinical trials? Where are you at in this thing?
We're still finalizing the development of the individual products of StimCore, which include tongue stem, sinus stem, palate stem, and oral maxillofacial stem. These are all, as well as art stem, and all these feed into breathe stem. But the short answer is we're in early stage clinical studies to examine how well the first prototypes of these products work. After that stage, we will go into a pivotal study that will properly document with statistical significance the safety and efficacy of the product. And then after that, we would apply with the FDA to go to market. Now, we already have FDA clearance for pain relief and improving circulation. But what we want to do is add additional data that would say that this could be used to shrink your tongue, this could be used to tighten up the tissue in your mouth, this could be used to reshape your arch and your airways to improve breathing. And we really need well-controlled data to do that. And Dr. Les Miller, by the way, Les was co-editor of one of the leading textbooks on regenerative medicine in our field. And he brings to the table not only heart failure background, but regenerative medicine background. And we consider this to be regenerative medicine. So these bioelectric signals and the things we're doing are basically getting your body to heal itself. And the other choices of using drugs or using surgery, cutting things out or cutting part of your tongue out,
Oh my God.
these are more dramatic. And we're trying to utilize natural processes within your body to basically coax your body to heal itself.
Wow. I'm going to have to let that one roll around in my head for a little bit here. Come back to the doctor to take us out here. You've been down this path before. You've studied regenerative medicine. You've pioneered products in the past here. What excites you about this? Is it the opportunity to help so many people? Is it the simplicity of what you're trying to do? Is it the people that you're going to do it through? As I understand, the products get developed and then they get licensed through what? Just ordinary dentists are going to prescribe these things? I don't have to go to a special high-priced sleep clinic or something? Walk me through this opportunity here for you and what attracted you to this.
One is just the prevalence of the problem and the consequences of the problem, which really makes it really a high priority for me to try and do a better job of diagnosing and managing. But I think that the approach that Dr. Bittner's developed is a non-invasive largely and much different than what we have available with just CPAP, for example. So I'm enthused about the options and the scope of what they've learned and are approaching this with the different technologies, as Howard mentioned. But I really think this is going to have a significant impact. It'll be people well trained to use this equipment. It won't be a casual, anybody can sign up and start practicing.
Yeah,
so
right.
It's a well-controlled proposition. And I think there's no question that there is such a waiting list to get these people diagnosed.
I'm raising my hand right now here. How do I get into a trial? I mean, for too long, I've just accepted this is just the way it is. Maybe it was my diet. Maybe it was my lifestyle. Maybe it's my age. Maybe I'm just born to have this kind of, it's my gene structure or something here. My father snored, I snored. This is just the way it is. And it is a bigger problem than even I probably want to admit.
It is. And I think the message I would leave to your listening audience is that don't let snoring and these problems seem like that's just a part of life. That
Yeah.
we really can do a much better job than we have before in helping people.
Well, I like the idea of helping. I certainly like the idea of non-invasive. Too many things, they want to go cut something out and I got a major surgery and a major recovery and a major question mark. I don't know, maybe it's just the chicken in me, but too many people my age don't want to go through major surgery anymore here. We're doing everything we can to stay out of hospitals, and I'm sorry, to stay away from doctors, because we're not sure once we go down that path what happens is. But you guys are offering something. I was fascinated by this, and I would love to share with anybody. How do they learn more? Is there a place? Either of you. I'll go back to Howard here. I mean, is this just top secret? We're all in the UCI's innovation lab. You got to have fingerprints and stuff to get in here, biometric scans. This isn't open to the public here yet. But if somebody had an interest, not necessarily, it's not ready to be tested on ordinary people, I suppose, but I don't know. doctors, investors, other sorts of types. So how would they get in touch with you guys to learn more about this, or other people like us that want to report on these things?
We do have a website for BreatheStem. It's breathestim.com, BreatheStim.com. And we will be recruiting patients to participate in clinical trials very soon. And all of the StimCore technologies I mentioned for shrinking the tongue, for opening up your sinuses, for shrinking the loose tissues in your palate, for oral maxillofacial stimulation to help your breathing. All of those technologies will.
You're going to need some people to try them here. There's going to be some clinical tests and trials done here. All right. Well, start with BreatheStem, like stimulate, BreatheStem. And I hope you guys will come back and keep us advised, because this is, I just when I keep thinking they've come up with something for everything, I realize they really didn't come up with anything for snoring, and there's an awful lot of us doing it, and it's more than an inconvenience. It probably is, in some sense, a life shortener or a life threatener. It certainly isn't. It certainly doesn't make life as fun as it used to be here, when you're sleepy and can't snore and constantly getting poked and yelled at for sleeping here like this.
I do want to add one more thing, that our 4-year-old son suffered of sleep breathing disorder this past year.
Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry to hear. So this isn't just for old guys like me here, huh?
It's true. And after studying it, it affects growth of children. It affects their neurological function, their cognitive development, and can lead to a lot of problems.
Because I guess it's all about oxygen eventually, right?
It really is. So if you have this problem, you're not getting enough oxygen to your body. It also affects your immune system. So if you're not getting enough sleep, not getting enough oxygen, and if your sleep is interrupted and you're not going into deep sleep, all of which was happening to him, your immune system is compromised. And in this day, everybody needs to do whatever they can do to keep their immune system strong.
Amen to that. Well, we'll leave with that. Keep your immune system strong, and keep your radio dialed to this station here, because we'll try and update you more. Thank you both for coming here, and I wish you the best of luck as you start down this journey. I'm sure it's a long one. I'm sure it's not a quick one, but hopefully the outcome has so much potential. I can see it already. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, there you have it. Another example of why people tune into this station and these shows, because we show you the most amazing people doing the most incredible things right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OCTalkRadio.net.